I'd like to welcome back John, I'd like you to welcome back John Newlove tonight. He's been in Nelson now for the past 2 years. He taught full-time in the writing program at DTUC 2 years ago and has been living in Nelson writing on a senior writing arts grant, Canada Council Arts grant for the past year. His last book of poetry is the Green Plain from Ulican Books in Nanaimo, and he's the winner of a Governor General's Award for Poetry in 1972 for a book called Lies. And I think he's going to read some standards tonight. So please welcome John Newlove.
Hello. What Fred means by standards is that I'm always too chicken to read new stuff in front of people I know. I usually wait, as I think it was Robert Croach just said, 2,000 miles away in front of strangers. That's the easiest way to do it. Especially if someone has heard you, as some of you have heard me pontificate about poetry. I'm not too sure that the practice follows the preaching at all times. I found from time to time that people, for reasons that bewilder me, take my stuff seriously. Sometimes they I think the tendency generally is to take my funny stuff seriously and to laugh at the serious stuff. There's no particular plan to the sequence I've laboriously penciled out, except that very roughly it goes chronologically from pre-1968 to 1981, if I get brave enough to read that far along. This is called the Squirrel Peanut Butter Song, and why it's called that I'm not sure, except that at one time, like many of us, I lived almost exclusively on squirrel peanut butter, Kraft dinner, and oatmeal in all its forms. I did have in this the great Canadian bilingual experience. And I think it's rather confused, like my life. It was actually published in Maclean's magazine, which confuses me too. Time to do something, like taking a nap, or a knapsack and going to Saskatoon or Montreal, or getting drunk, or getting married. At times I find life difficult to understand, but only rarely. It is then that I stop making a fool of myself, but only rarely. Why, for instance, does a friend send me a can containing 50 Japanese cigarettes called Peace? There is a stylized drawing of a dove on the can, a dove falling on its head. I nearly went crazy with rage trying to open the can. Or why do the rich sometimes think it is virtuous to be poor, and why do the poor think it is virtuous to be poor? Answer, they don't. And why do I keep a dried flower, brown orange, wired to the carrier bar of my dusty typewriter? Answer, I am too lazy to take it off. Why do I have 50 pencils of various colors, including gold, and 4 ink pens, and a dozen ballpoints at least, when writing by hand gives me cramps? I must be out of shape. A simple wooden matchstick dipped in my blood would be sufficient for signing my name to begging letters. Why isn't there a deep reason for everything? Or why can't I be serious? I want to have a decent excuse for getting drunk, like a tragic childhood or adulthood, or unbearable secrets and incurable diseases. That would be better than just liking it. And why go to Montreal? I'm no good with languages and admission. I didn't do it to learn French. I did it so I could come back and say, I've just been to Montreal. Picking dewworms is a terrible job. I'd better get married fast. Picking dewworms is a terrible job. We all know that poets are romantic souls, aren't they? This is called Love Letter for the perfectly good reason that it came almost verbatim from a letter I wrote and sent, and for once had sense enough to keep a copy of. How are you? And whose hero do you want me to be? My tooth hurts. And it is raining. There is no oil for the stove, or when there is, it leaks on the floor. Is your father well? I'm spitting blood again from that abscessed tooth I always suck on. And how is your father? That bastard I've never met. And your mother? God damn them both. I hope I never meet them. Or you again. Love, John. No answer. I hate people who don't answer letters. This, like a lot of my earlier things, is sort of a grocery list. I was brought up in Saskatchewan, fled to Vancouver a while after getting out of high school and other disasters. And it's just a grocery list of quick impressions of Vancouver spring dawn. City in a cold, paranoid, acetylene light dawn, slowly warming up, with gulls in the water, gulls in the air, gulls on the buildings, pigeons and eagles in the air, sparrows and neon in the air, hawks, rain and fog in the air, smell of it, the white and brown streaked statues of minor men, or soldiers making European flowers now, parks and parking lots, gun-hipped policemen in brass badges, blue uniforms, black and prowling cars with red lights, sirens, handcuffs and gas waiting to be used, the patented statues worn green in the rain, art galleries and other butcher shops, heaving concrete sidewalks and carefully heaving, breathing, Javex blondes with real wire brassiers marking and lifting them, sailors, bewildered old ladies with strange hats, tall feathers yanked from the rumps of old, odd, dead, extinct birds, stuck in the hats, librarians and lawyers, longshoremen and flowers, lit buses making happy xylophone sounds on their wires, making happy xylophone sounds in their full coin boxes, prostitutes with their full coin boxes, busboys, sharp-cornered banks and evil blind men tapping on them, with white canes and coins, cornered customers inside, tourists and whores and flowers, beer waiters taking taxis to work, evangelists, newspaper boxes, crippled newspaper men slobbering on headlines, hunchbacked newspaper men in red wool toques and torn scarves against the wind and rain, university students, adversity students, traffic lights, salesmen, cabbies, dozens of languages and thousands of tongues to twist them, mouths to lip them. Standing in the light, here things come. Birds, gulls, neon, police, rain, signs in the air. Yes, I think this is the point at which I panic and leave out something I'd written down. Well, I do remember one of my older things by heart. I remember it. It's just a piece of a verse, not a poem. God knows what a poem is. I remember it because it's short. It's called Elephants. Elephants aren't any more important than insects, but I'm on the side of elephants, unless one of them tries to crawl up my leg. I consider that true paranoia. Vancouver again. Very often, very heavily, what is around me, what I write, insinuates itself into the writing, particularly so because in the case of this piece called The Flowers, it was a subject I could only touch peripherally, a tangent, brushing a circle. It is raining, rain streaks down the window to my left. Cars sluice water in the gutters. In the night, the round neon clock containing sign hanging outside beside my window sways in the wind and buzzes. The flowers sprout everywhere, in pots and boxes on lawns and trees, in gardens and ditches. The flowers are growing. The wet wind will nourish them, cut some down, but feed the rest. The sign crackles and swings on its bar, iron bar. The cars go by all the night. They cut a momentary trail and mark, disappearing on the wet black pavement. The cars go by. The police in their cars prowl restlessly up and down the rainy avenue, looking for interlopers, anyone, afoot at night in the rain, the blue and dangerous gun-hipped cops. The car came smashing and wrecking his face, his head, poor hit, hurt head, bleeding on the roadway, and in the cool hospital, night in bandages and glued on tape. His eyes, they said, were soft and easy years ago. Now he wears them cleverly, like some secret, coupled badge, twin and original, dark, ice eyes that watch and assess slowly what they have fixed on. His head does not move. In the hospitals, with antiseptic nurses stripping him, knife-fisted surgeons bending down, they cut irony to save his life. And he stayed days and years filled with tantalizing drugs, interminable dreams, tangled in bandages and shocks, suspicions, a nonchalant profusion of hopes and cures, surrounded by the tears of his rainy, crazy peers. Rain, wind, and spring, all things drove him crazy and grow flowers, flowers that dance in the rain. The bulging flowers that grew in his head, plants of evil or God, some holy epileptic angel bloated, inhuman flowers shining their bright colors, insistently turning slowly in the wind and spring, tortuous, creaking growths, thick, cancerous things in the rain, stems like the barrels of rifles, fat lead bullet roots gripping the damp earth. And the cars pass up and down the streets, disappearing trails. The blue police pass, coughing behind their leathery fists, guns dangling from their hips, eyes watching. My flowery clock buzzes and mutters, typewriter taps like the rain. I breathe as harshly as the wind. So, when you speak about the past, when you do say an elegy for yourself for that death, you have to take on an almost mocking formality at times. So, then if I cease desiring, you may sing a song of how young I was. You may praise famous moments, all have them, of the churches I broke into for wine. Not praise, The highways I traveled drunkenly, in winter the cars I stole. You may allow me moments, not monuments, I being content. It is little, but it is little enough. Robert Crouch, do I detect the influence of Robert Creeley in that? It occurred to me. Coming from Saskatchewan, from semi-rural, if there is such a word, Saskatchewan, we moved away, fled to the oceans, woke up a long time afterwards, realized that we knew nothing of ourselves, not much of our history, and many of us had to write it down as questions or temporary answers or speeches to have some idea of what we were and what had shaped us. Riel was just a word. The 1885 rebellion was passed over quickly. We knew quite a bit about English history and American history. I guess it was the same everywhere. So Riel is in here. I think in this one or the one after it, a couple of the officers in charge of the expedition from Eastern Canada against the Riel Rebellion, and also mentioned in one or the other one, I will read them, are a couple of chiefs, Cree chiefs, Big Bear and Poundmaker. Was also mentioned a man named Wandering Spirit, Kapapamajakweo, who was a war chief. He was hanged. Mentioned by way of sort of a subtextual pun is another man who was hanged named Miserable Man. Now, your mum doesn't give you much chance when she calls you miserable, man. So these next two, the first one of which is called Crazy Riel, just trying to put together my own history for myself, since nobody else would tell me except the hints and footnotes and tales, not all necessarily true, that I could garner. Sometimes the truth of the trenches, say, is more important than the truth of the historian, for the feeling at any rate. You'll find certain phrases I suddenly realize recurring again and again. They gun-hipped cops, and in this case, time to write a poem or something. Fill up a page. The creature noise. Huge massed forces of men hating each other. What young men do not know, to keep quiet contemporaneously. Contempt. The robin diligently on the lawn sucks up worms, hopping from one to another, youthfully. 16 miles from my boyhood home, the frogs sit in the grassy marsh that looks like a golf course by the lake, green frogs. Boys catch them for bait or sail, or caught them, time, to fill up a page, to fill up a hole, to make things feel better, noise. The noise of the images that are people I will never understand, admire them though I may. Poundmaker, Big Bear, Wandering Spirit, those miserable men. Riel, Crazy Riel, Riel hanged. Politics must have its way, the way of noise, to fill up, the definitions bullets make and field guns. The noise your dying makes, to which you are the only listener. The noise the frogs hesitate to make as the metal hook breaks through the skin and slides smoothly into place in the jaw. The noise the fish makes caught in the jaw, which is only an operation of the body and the element, which a stone would make thrown in the same water, thrashing, not its voice. The lake is not displaced with one less jackfish body. In the slough that looks like a golf course, the family of frogs sings, metal throats. The images of death hang upside down. It is only the listening for death, fingering the paraphernalia, the noise of the men you admire and cannot understand, knowing little enough about them, the knowledge waxing, the wax that paves hell's road, slippery as the road to heaven, so that as a man slips, he might as easily slide into being a saint as destroyer. In his ears the noise magnifies, he forgets men. Porches, and it winds up in the place in Vancouver where I wrote it years afterwards. This compost heap I call my mind seems to take a long time. Dealing with things, so I seem to have to write out of whatever personal history has accumulated. To write anything immediate is very difficult. Some of my most immediate sounding stuff has taken me a long time to make immediate and simple. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall where it may. On the hot wheat, on the dark yellow fields of wild mustard, the fields of bad farmers. On the river, on the dirty river full of boys, and on the throbbing powerhouse and the low dam of cheap cement and rocks boiling with white water. And on the cows and their powerful bulls, the heavy tracks filling with liquid at the edge of the narrow prairie river running steadily away. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall where it may. Among the piles of bones that dot the prairie, in vision and history, the buffalo and deer, dead Indians, dead settlers, the frames of lost houses, left behind in the dust of the Depression, dry and profound, that will come again in the land and in the spirit, the land shifting and the minds blown dry and empty. I have not seen it except in pictures and talk. But there is the fence, covered with dust laden, the wrecked house stupidly empty. Here is a picture for your wallet of the beaten farmer and his wife leaning toward each other, sadly smiling and emptied of desire. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall where it may. Off the edge of the black prairie, as you thought you could fall, a boy at sunset, not watching the sun set, but watching the black earth. Never ending, they said in school, round. But you saw it ending, finished, definite, precise, visible only miles away. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall where it may. On a hot night, the town is in the streets. The boys and girls are practicing against each other. The men talk and eye the girls. The women talk and eye each other. The Indians play pool, eye on the ball. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall where it may. And damn the troops, the horsemen are wheeling in the sunshine, the Cree practicing for their deaths. Mr. Poundmaker, gentle, sweet Mr. Big Bear, it is not, unfortunately, quite enough to be innocent. It is not enough merely not to offend. At times to be born is enough, to be in the way is too much. Some Colonel Otter, some Major General Middleton will get you, you Indian. It is no good to say, I would rather die at once than be in that place. Though you love that land more, you will go where they take you. Ride off any horizon and let the measure fall. Where it may, it doesn't have to be the prairie. It could be the cold soul of the cities, blown empty by commerce and desiring commerce to fill up the emptiness. The streets are full of people. It is night, the lights are on, the wind blows as far as it may. The streets are dark and full of people. Their eyes are fixed as far as they can see, beyond each other, to the concrete horizon, definite, tall against the mountains, stopping vision visibly. I would rather die at once than be in that place, is what Poundmaker said when they sent him to jail. This is a short piece called No Song, which I think I felt like when I wrote it. No song, said the bird in its attitude, caw, declining the privilege of music or melody, caw, standing on its tree, caw, fingering the absolute wood beneath. A critic, God bless them, they give me so much to talk about, criticized the word fingering. He's never seen a crow sitting on a branch. But then what does a critic need to see? One of the towns I grew up in was a curious mixture, but largely Saskatchewan, Doukhobor, and you got sometimes with a grandson helping with the translation, some pretty interesting stories. An old man died, and it was an old-fashioned funeral. I was very young. I was asked to it. I was a friend of a son or grandson of the family. He had come over from the old country, the persecution by the imperial troops, the confusion of changing culture as well as country, completely the confusion of the deeds of what they called the English. We were all the English. And of course our people thought they were crazy when a rumor of paradise swept through the villages and they marched to find it, but we did some things that they thought were pretty crazy too. Well, I thought about Mike's grandfather years later and thought, if I don't write a funeral poem for him, who will? There's always lots of people to write the poems for the great of the earth, but who writes them for the peasants? So it's just called Doukhobor. When you die and your weathery corpse lies on the chipped kitchen table, the wind blowing the wood of your house, painted in shades of blue, farmer. Out from Russia, as the century turned, died, and lay at the feet of the wars, who will ever be able to say for you what you thought at the sight of the Tsar's horsemen, riding with whips among you, the sight of the rifles burning on bonfires, the long sea voyage, strange customs endured, officials changing your name into the strange script that covered the stores, the polite brown men who spoke no language you understood and helped you free your team from Saskatchewan winter mud. Who will be able to say for you just what you thought as the villages marched naked to Eden and the English went to war and came back again with their funny ways, proud to speak of killing each other, you, whose mind refused the slaughter, refused the blood, you who will lie in your house stiff as winter, dumb as an ox, unable to love, while your women sob and offer the visitors tea. I haven't decided whether I always put down too much or I talk too much. Both, I guess. I don't want to read that. I'm still not satisfied with the end of this, but I'll read it in any case, partly because I like dreams, I like the information of magic, and because after it was published in an earlier book or a magazine or something, I got a letter from somebody in Western Alberta, I think, or Eastern BC, saying, I thought I was the only person who knew about that place, but you've described it perfectly, that it was sort of a waking room. I thought that was a good sign, but of what, I don't know. It's called a pool. And in his dreams he came once to a clear, sunken pool. In the middle of the forest of pines, water from an older continent floored by long green grasses, wavering on their sides through the refraction. The pool itself lay calmly surrounded by a perfect circle of gray stone ledge. Hot resin of the pines flavored the air. How does anyone ever know how he has got where he is? The silver water lay in a circular clearing. No fish swam in it. Trees stood up straightly to the sky. Magic, magic. He stood with his arms stiff by his sides and his head bent, watching his reflection on the surface of the pool. Stillness about him was absolute. For hours there had been no sound, but that of his body walking among the pines, going farther and farther away from the world. As he moved, the forest expanded. His mind slid off objects. He tried to look at himself in the pool, squinting, but only a squinting figure peered back. He could not make out its eyes. How had he got where he was? He remembered walking and the sound of walking in the past. Then an effortless drifting, his body pulled forward toward the pool, surer with each step. It was dark, and he lay down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed. He dreamed that he rose in the night, turning his back on the silver, stone-encased water, with never a look at it, eyes averted, leaving the clearing in the pines. Cool air of midnight diminished the resinous odor. The scent was clean. Nothing impeded as he left the circle. Silently he walked through the shrinking forest. The night softened the needles beneath his feet. From the forest's edge he emerged into brilliant light. Red buildings stood against the sky, beams probed for raiders, a mass of humans ran like a herd, the sound of desperate breathing, sirens and lights rushed towards him, machines screamed. He woke up sweating and cramped and said, "I won't wake up," and woke up. Okay. This is, in an odd way, a set of two things of which I will read only the second, since they don't depend on each other for much more than tone. It doesn't really matter. And in any case, if I remember, I intend in that workshop tomorrow to say something that I hope is mildly interesting about the construction of the other piece. But this is called The Weather. I'd like to live a slower life. The weather gets in my words, and I want them dry. Line after line writes itself on my face, not a grace of age, but wrinkled humor. I laugh more than I should, or more than anyone should. This is good. But guess again. Everyone leans each on each other. This is a life without an image, but only because nothing does much more than just resemble. Do the shamans do what they say they do, dancing? This is epistemology. This is guesswork. This is love. This is giving up gorgeousness to please you, you beautiful dead-to-be. God bless the weather and the words. Any words, any weather, and where or whom. I'd never taken count before. I wish I had. And then I did. And here, the weather wrote again. And one last piece from the Fabulous Writing magazine, which I can always find because it's right in the middle. I tend to say this is certainly not a poem, it's a speech. It's built on oratory, on rhetoric, but whether it is a poem my satisfaction or dissatisfaction is none of your business, it's up to you. It's called Insect Hopes. The world's longest poem didn't start like this, didn't go on like this. It doesn't end like this. There was still a cigarette burning. After the ending, after all the Indians, the pygmies, the gypsies, the Jews, the burned and the black and the spurned, after all the cheated and demeaned were buried by bulldozers or sold as cheap souvenirs in green translucent glass, that cigarette still fumed. What wealth! And the writer of all that stuff was still stupid. He still thought that when people said, "I understand," they understood. He didn't know that he lied for pleasure, others' profit. And he still saw all around wrap-around death and didn't believe it, and woke up one night in the maw and believed it, knowing what was wanted. Not these sweaty visions everyone has, no recognizable rhythms, no beauty in the line, no knowledge, only noise, no feeling of pain. This whole civilization is noise, but we are not holy beasts yet. The politicians roar at us until civilization is minor, and we are surrounded by liars, so that when the poet that is in us says, "We are surrounded by liars," he is called a liar, or is given prizes, liar obligations. Oh, I am sick, sick, and called sick, and I am healthier than you are. At least I know how lovely we are, enduring, which is history. We are one after the other. We are the stars of this show. But we are at the end of all time. What nonsense we talk. What nonsense we're told. What nonsense we are. But I wanted to tell you still how lovely we are. Of the ages of jewels, of failed cities, of the notion that there was good. How this century began like all the others, in blood and milk-white dreams, and ended with insect hopes, all in a heap, like all the others who ever died.